Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 8th webinar session in the Meet Melbourne 2020 online series. Tonight's session is covering the Bachelor of Music. So this series of events is running across May, covering all of the Bachelor degrees in the University of Melbourne. My name is Cody Moore. I am the Senior Marketing Coordinator of Recruitment for the Faculty of Fine Arts and Music, which includes the Bachelor of Music that you'll hear about this evening. But before we go any further, I would like to offer an acknowledgement to the Indigenous people who are the traditional custodians of the various lands from which we all meet today. I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and welcome any Indigenous attendees that we have today. My home, where I'm speaking to you from right now, is on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and the South Bank campus of the University of Melbourne, where our Bachelor of Music is mostly based, is on the land of the Boonwurrung people. And we regularly acknowledge that the people have met on that land where the campus is based to play their music and dance their dances and make their art for thousands of years. And we humbly continue that tradition today. Now, I should mention that this session is being recorded and it can be accessed afterwards if you would like to review it or to share it. So the way that this evening is going to work is that I'll be giving a brief overview of the Bachelor of Music, and then we'll be hearing from some staff and students from each of the three main streams to tell you a bit more detail about each of those streams and some of the personal experience of being involved in this course. If you have any questions throughout the session, you can type them into the chat window and they will be read and responded to by colleagues from our Melbourne team off screen for the duration of the webinar, and they'll be doing their best to answer as many questions as possible. Any questions that are not answered can be submitted by you onto our study website afterwards, and we'll get onto them as soon as we can. So a brief overview for those of you that may not have been down to our South Bank campus before. Why study at Melbourne? So you can see in the picture that's on the screen there, it's the city of Melbourne, and just to the south you can see the Arts Centre spire, just below that the NGV, and then there's our University of Melbourne South Bank campus. This is where most of the Bachelor of Music is based. The Melbourne Conservatorium of Music, which is one half of the Fine Arts and Music faculty, is Australia's oldest and most prestigious music institution. It is based down here since the start of last year at the South Bank campus. One of our streams of the Bachelor of Music, the Performance, Composition, Musicology and Ethnomusicology stream, is based within the newly completed and award-winning Ian Potter South Bank Centre. And this is a fantastic facility with amazing acoustics and great spaces for students to rehearse and to perform, with staff and students co-located all throughout the building. Speaking of the staff, that is one of the amazing things about the way that we do teach music within this Bachelor are our highly skilled and renowned staff, including international and Australian instrumental teachers, music researchers and award-winning lecturers. We often have masterclasses by visiting Australian and international musicians, conductors and researchers. One of my favourites was last year when the University of Melbourne helped to host International Jazz Day, and we had Herbie Hancock on campus delivering masterclasses for some of our students. And that was a real highlight, but not the only visiting artist that we had last year. It's a fairly regular occurrence. We do have an extensive performance program, including the most extensive ensemble program in the country. So normally across our campus, down at South Bank and including some performances at Parkville as well, we usually host about 300 events across the faculty each year. Obviously, this is a little different in 2020, but it's been really impressive to see the ways that our staff and our students have been able to adapt to the current environment that we're in and still find ways for performance. One of the most amazing ways that I've seen this delivered was actually 104 of our performance students actually performing Ravel's Bolero, and they all performed in their rooms at home, recording their own instrumental pieces that were then layered on top of each other and distributed as one video. I highly recommend you jump onto our website and check it out. So we're still continuing to give these opportunities for students to perform even from the situation that we're in. And we do have a lot of partnerships with industry, particularly where we're based down in South Bank in the heart of Melbourne's cultural arts precinct. As I mentioned, next to the Arts Centre, the NGB, we've got Hamer Hall right there. We're next to the Melbourne Recital Centre. Lots of opportunities for our students to engage with industry, to engage with people working in the industry, as well as have opportunities to be in and watch performances. Now, just a quick overview of the Bachelor of Music that we deliver at the University of Melbourne. It is a 3-year degree delivered full-time, mostly at the South Bank campus with some subjects up at Parkville as well. And it is a pre-professional music training course, so lots of practical classes for all of our students. We offer this, as I mentioned, in 3 main streams. So one stream, generally our classical stream, around music performance, composition, musicology, which is the history of music, and ethnomusicology, which explores the relationship of culture and music. This is a course that students would enroll in the performance stream in year 1, and then could choose to move into composition, musicology, or ethnomusicology in the 2nd year. We also offer a stream in jazz and improvisation. This is our contemporary music stream, and a stream in interactive composition, which is more of our media-based music, and you'll hear a bit more about that from our staff and students as we move through this evening. All of the specializations develop technically advanced and experienced musicians through an immersive and practical curriculum. And this includes core subjects in each of the areas, as well as lots of opportunity for music electives or breadth from across the university. So delving a little deeper into the music performance, composition, musicology, and ethnomusicology, throughout this course, students do have one-to-one tuition in vocal and or instrumental performance or composition, depending on the stream of their expertise. There are contextual music studies, music language, and music history to support the practical components of the course, as well as an extensive suite of electives. And the breadth component throughout the Bachelor of Music is really popular with students to be able to select other subjects to complement their music studies as well. You can see the instruments on the screen there that are part of the performance stream. So we have the different sections through brass, guitar, keyboard, strings, woodwind, and then orchestral, percussion, and classical voice. So this performance stream does not include contemporary voice. If you're interested in contemporary voice, it would be the jazz and improvisation stream that you'll be looking at. Jazz and improvisation is a stream that balances skills with creativity, with a lot of focus on that improvisation aspect of music. And we encourage the students to develop the personal voice and advanced technical skills through contemporary music performance practice, and also creating their own compositions. So this is really broader than I think what a lot of people initially think of as jazz, and really encompasses jazz, world music, pop, rock, folk, indie, funk. You'll hear from staff and students later on who can talk a little bit more about this variety. There is a lot of collaboration across the campus. When I was mentioning before that there are the Faculty of Fine Arts and Music, the Fine Arts stream has performers and visual artists, as well as musicians on the campus. And the students do collaborate a lot, but particularly between jazz and improvisation and interactive composition, there are a lot of opportunities for collaboration too. So interactive composition, it's a collaborative program that teaches students how to create music and sounds for a range of contemporary media contexts and platforms. So what that means is any music that you might see in film or television or animation, music within theatre or music theatre, increasingly advertising and video games, online. So mixing that audio-visual component, those audio-visual components together. This is the slide that I think answers a lot of the questions that we received prior to this event. A lot of people are really keen to know how to actually get into the courses. I can give you a quick overview now through each of these points, but I highly recommend having a look at that website that's at the top. So that's the auditions and interviews page for all of the courses that we have available. And they go into great detail into the types of things that the staff are looking for auditions for each of these courses. But just at a intro to the auditions for each of these, in the performance stream, It is a suggested level of AMEB grade 7 for instrumentalists and grade 5 for singers. This is not mandatory, it's just suggested so that you know you're within the ballpark when applying. As part of the preparation there, we ask students to prepare 3 contrasting pieces from Western art music. And the combination of those 3 pieces will take about 15 to 20 minutes to perform. So that gives you an idea of the type of thing that's expected in the audition there. If you're interested in applying for multiple specializations or instruments, you're certainly welcome to do so, but you will need to do the audition process for each of the instruments that you're interested in. In jazz and improvisation, what they're really looking for is creativity and the ability to improvise. So you will be asked to show that through the audition. It will involve performance of 2 pieces, including one from a set list, which you can access on that audition and interview site, and one which is a contrasting piece selected from that same list. It could be a world music piece, or it could be an example of your own work as well. So an opportunity there to show some of your creativity. For jazz and improvisation, there will be callbacks made on the same day that you audition, and this will include a performance and a bit of an interview as well. For interactive composition, you'll be asked to submit a folio comprising of 3 to 4 original works, a total of, I think it's about 8 minutes. So it doesn't need to be the full piece, but just a sample of those, including at least one that has an audio-visual piece and a notated score for at least one of your original works as well. After you've applied for the course, you will be sent a creative task that you will need to complete prior to the audition or interview. And then at that audition interview, you'll be asked to perform one of your pieces for about 2 minutes. And that performance could be whatever is most interesting to you, could be instrumental, vocal, electronic. So that's just a bit of a brief overview of the course and of the audition requirements. Now we're going to hear from some of the staff and students in each of these areas. So I would like to, first of all, welcome Don Immel, who is the Associate Director of Music Performance, particularly in the brass section, and is a great trombone player. And I would like to also welcome Tess Waller, who is a 3rd-year student in this Bachelor of Music Performance course, and she's a clarinetist. So Don and Tess will tell us a little bit about their stream. So Don, we can't hear you at the moment.
Now you can, I hope. Thank you.
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
So much. Awesome. Thanks for coming to the presentation this evening, and so much for introducing us, Cody. It's a pleasure to have so many people interested in the program. We are thrilled with what has been happening with the Bachelor of Music over the last several years, and moving into our new spaces, of course, is a big part of that. So we're very much looking forward to getting back into our new spaces. So I know that we have parents and applicants here, and I just kind of wanted to start with one idea. Parents tend to want 2 things. They want their kids to be happy, thriving, engaged people, and they want their kids to have skills that will lead towards a job. Maybe so they'll leave your house or something, I'm not sure. But I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to speak about this, because there are so many elements of the Bachelor of Music that lead to so many areas. So we can absolutely talk through those things, but I know that there's interest in, what do students do after a Bachelor of Music degree, and what happens to them in the job markets and whatnot. And so I'll just kind of quickly go through some of the many areas. Performers, of course, all of our Australian orchestras have graduates of our programs. The opera companies and major soloist roles to choruses, military and police bands, many orchestras around the world, many lecturers around the world. We currently have graduate students at the Royal Academy of Music in London, Brussels Conservatory, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Manhattan School of Music, Yale, Coburn, New England Conservatory, and on and on and on. So students that finish their degrees here, although many of them stay in town and do further studies with us at the graduate level, some of them go overseas and end up in amazing careers in many amazing places. In addition to performers, our graduates are. I think this is what we're proudest of, and this is across the Bachelor of Music in our 3 areas. Musicians are the critical thinkers in our society and in our communities. And we teach that, and we help students understand their place in our society and their community. They're entrepreneurs, music educators, public schools, private schools, their own studios, music therapists, composers of art and commercial musics, composers for film, music critics. Everybody loves a music critic. Conductors, show music directors, industry leaders, politicians, doctors, studio engineers, barristers. I mean, on and on and on. Our vice chancellor of the entire university is a extremely high level classical clarinetist, and that is pretty much the norm across all industries. So I'll just tell you once again, we help create thriving, engaged people that have lots of talents for leading to very interesting and successful jobs. So they will leave home eventually. So there's a bit of an overview of what can become of our students. I know that there are a number of questions, and I'm happy to go through a couple of those if you like me to do that at this time. I mean, some of those go around the concept of the diploma in music versus the Bachelor of Music. And the Bachelor of Music is one of the core undergraduate degrees at the University of Melbourne. And the diploma in music is like a minor specialization. But a lot of students in biosciences and other majors enjoy at the same time being part of the diploma in music. And what that gives access to is, with the same audition, access to the one-on-one lessons on your instrument or voice, gives access to any of the ensembles that Tess is going to hopefully speak about in a moment. And it just gives them a sense of belonging in a community. Our classes are quite small, and the one-on-one lectures with our high-level teachers, then we come together in small cohorts, maybe 5, maybe 20, and then again in the ensemble cohorts that might be as big as 150 or even more in some cases. And that's a built-in community that you don't want to give up after you finish your secondary experience. And so if mom and dad, if you're saying you have to get a science degree, well, you still can participate in these fantastic high-level performance experiences. So there's a bit about the diploma versus a bachelor. There's much more we can go into in that. The Bachelor in Music in itself, how to get in. Look, we don't expect that you're an all-star. Some of our students that come in are really advanced, and when they come in, but many of them are just figuring out how to do the things, learn the skills that they're going to eventually need. That's our job. So your job is to get the nerve to come in and take an audition and try it out. And our job is to help you become a fluid musician or instrumentalist, a fantastic public speaker, a fantastic member of the community, etc. So I'm happy to take other questions along those lines if there's things that have come up from Cody, but I'd also really like to give Tess a few minutes to kind of speak to what a typical day might be, for example. Tess is one of our now very advanced clarinetist students, and she's really climbed the ranks over the last few years because of her perseverance and great attitude and hard work. So Tess, maybe you can start with what a typical day is at the University Conservatorium.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Don. I hope everyone can hear me, and thank you for coming along tonight. This is a great opportunity for everyone to get more information about where they'd like to study past high school. And for me, in my experience here at the university, it has been amazing so far. A typical day for me will often change, but the things that never change in my day are finding time to practice and finding time to be social with people, and often a lot of rehearsals. Throughout the week, and on an average week, we'll have, I would say, 4 or 5 rehearsals for various ensembles. Definitely a specific instrument class. So for me personally, I will have a clarinet class one day, and then I'll also have a class with the other wind instruments, so flute, saxophone, oboe, bassoon. We'll all get together and have a class together in which we're able to perform for each other and give feedback and get engaged with the different instruments within our particular area. Beyond that, we'll also have a weekly lesson with our teachers, and those can be some of the best times for you as a musician, and it's a place where you're really able to grow and connect with the teacher who's gone through what you're going through, who's had the experiences that you're going to have, who's had the courage to take the chance and to persevere, and who's made the mistakes, who's learned from them. So your teacher that you will eventually end up with will become a real mentor to you and just a great person to have there to be able to talk to. For me, on a day, I spend a good chunk of the time practicing, but I also know that sticking myself in a practice room for too long isn't at times the best mindset to go about learning. And I find that I've learned so much from just being around the other musicians and talking with them and talking with people outside of the clarinet family that we have, and getting to know trombone players, brass players, saxophonists. Just being around so many different people has been an amazing experience and is something that I will do daily while at the con. I also find that the rehearsal times that we get and the types of ensembles that we have are world renowned at the moment. We are absolutely so very lucky to have the people coordinating, running, conducting us, preparing us for concerts. We have a phenomenal team, and I'm so thankful for them. As Cody mentioned before, the Symphony Orchestra recently performed in 104 different spaces Bolero's Ravel, or Ravel's Bolero, I should say, and it was an amazing experience to be a part of. To know that I'm still performing with the orchestra and to be a part of that community, even while we're separated by many distances, it's still great to have that sense of connection there. And when we're all together in the room performing, it's an amazing feeling. And the social aspect that you get of being a part of a variety of ensembles, again, lends to that idea of building connections with people and gaining experiences and sharing stories with musicians, and also knowing that you're going through this journey together and no one is alone and you're always there for each other. And that supportive element is something that is shown across all of my time so far here within my degree.
Thank you so much, Jess. Look, I know that there are probably many, many questions coming through, but I know one of the other areas that I was asked to kind of speak to is, first of all, I want to thank Tess for speaking so eloquently. You're a great example of our student base. So thank you so much. And I think I think she can attest to that she probably feels extremely supported by the staff and other students, and that's what we need to have in this community in this time of day. So it's awesome. One of the questions that's come up a lot is what's the best way of preparing for an audition for the Bachelor of Music? And we're not looking for you to be an absolute killing all-star. We want you to put your best foot forward. And if that is playing a fairly, fairly not advanced piece, but playing it quite well, do that. If you're thinking of playing a very difficult, challenging piece because you think it'll wow us, and you can't really play it very well, that's okay, but you won't come across as confident. And we can kind of very quickly, within the first few measures, we could say, okay, this is okay. These are the things the student is great at. I think that we can start working in this way and that way. So the most important thing is to stay on your instrument, practice it most days, only on the days you eat. Practice it most days, and just continue working towards the basic competencies and enjoyment of your instrument or voice. That's the most important thing. The second most, actually equally important, is to keep up on your marks and your grades and your ATARs. Just keep aware of those, because those are two things that really help you get into the institution. There is not a bottom ATAR mark that we are looking for, unlike some areas have 95 or whatever it is. We are looking for a balanced person who has a decent ATAR that shows that they're showing up for school and doing all the right things, but that also have a passion for making music and being a community member. So are there other areas, Cody, that perhaps you'd like me to address, or that have the questions that have come through that you'd like me to spend a moment, or have we addressed everything pretty well here?
You've covered it, Don. That was great. Thank you. I know it's only a short time to cover so much information, but I think both yourself and Tess have given a really good feel for what it's like to be part of this performance stream and the types of things that students and staff both are involved in. So thank you.
Thanks.
That was really
great.
Yeah,
absolutely. And if there are questions, I'm used to getting lots of questions from parents, from students, and we want to make it a great experience for you getting into the institution, as well as going through it and getting out of it to move on to whatever you're going. So thank you so much for hosting, and I really look forward to actually seeing and meeting many of you.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Cody.
Thank you.
So that was a bit of an overview of the performance stream that will then also include composition, musicology, and ethnomusicology from second year. Now we're going to hear about the jazz and improvisation stream. And joining us, we have the head of jazz and improvisation, Associate Professor Rob Binks. Hi, Rob. And we also have Jade Nye, who is a current Bachelor of Music Honours student. Jade completed her Bachelor last year, majoring in vocals and then saxophone. So welcome, guys.
Thank you, Cody.
Oh, Rob, we can't hear you.
Little red button's hard to find. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks to Cody and Tess and Don for giving such a great introduction to the Bachelor. I really agree with everything Don and Tess were saying. This is a really great place to learn. In jazz and improvisation, we run it a little different to a more American style jazz training institution, insofar as in first year particularly, we spend a lot of time looking at jazz standards and really learning the harmonic language of jazz. We think that's really important. Second and third year, it's much more about the tunes that you're writing and recording. So using what you've learned in first year particularly to write your own music. So this is a course for people who really want to make their own music. Sometimes people get put off by the word jazz, and there's big band jazz, there's hip hop. No, wait a minute, that's not jazz. Well, actually, hip hop is a type of jazz. There's also, hot jazz, cool jazz, Dixieland jazz. So it's really hard to define what jazz is, but the way we define it is it's what you bring. And we're really, once we get a grasp of the language, looking to develop and extend the language and the personal voice. And Jade, who's going to talk in a little bit, is a great example of that, who is not only a great vocalist, but a great saxophone player, and now is looking at Flamingo as a vocalist and as a saxophonist to see what she can do with that in terms of more traditional forms of jazz. So we have ex-students working as straight up and down jazz musicians in New York. We have ex-students, I think the university term is alumni, working in Europe, Berlin and Amsterdam, particularly as avant-garde musicians. Occasionally I see our musicians are on Triple J's Hottest 100. Not that I listen to Triple J, although I actually do. If I turn on the television and watch something like Dancing with the Stars, not that I do, but sometimes I do, I see our musicians working in television bands, and I will see them working as composers on films. When we think about jazz, we're thinking about initially the African-American experience of jazz, but we're also thinking about R&B, thinking about indie pop, thinking about the blues, and all of those other things that come from really knowing your harmony and how to use it in a practical sense. So what we're looking for are good skills on your instrument, some familiarity with playing over jazz standards. When I say that, it might be that you've come from another improvisational tradition like South Korean music, South Korean traditional music, or Greek music or Indian music. So you could be a tabla player or an oud player, and we would really welcome you to audition. We make up our small ensembles, usually piano, bass, drums, horn players, and vocalists. But if we had a red hot bagpipes player come in, we would go there. So we're a relatively small cohort. We take in about 40 people a year, so we get to know you really well. And you can do your undergraduate, then do your honours, as Jade has done. Then you can do a master's and even a PhD. So you can be here for an awful long time, which is great because music is that lifelong learning experience. And sometimes we've had students who've done 3 years with us and come back to do a master's or an honours maybe 10 years later. In terms of career sorts of outcomes other than the ones that I've mentioned before, and as Don was saying, many of our students are thought leaders as well as being great musicians. So, you know, as well as having the hip hop sort of thing covered, we've got some people in Los Angeles doing that. We've also got people who are working in the evening as musicians, but have also gone on to do law as part through the Melbourne model. So strangely enough, you're really well covered if you get into any sort of legal trouble if you're in the jazz and improv department, because we've got a few lawyer friends who in the evening go on to play gigs whilst representing you know, devious people during the day in court. We've also got a person who started their own airline in the Northern Territory. So, you know, there's we think about it as being like a portfolio career that, yes, you want to get your skills as a musician up. You want to get your composing skills for small ensembles up. You want to also get some good skills recording. So all of our students hopefully will be able to record their own music as well as write their own music, arrange their own music, and play it to a pretty high level however they want. So the big question for us is what are you going to bring to music? How are you going to change the musical landscape? It might be that you want to play straight up and down jazz, that's fine. It might be that you want to be an experimental musician, that's fine. It might be that you really want to be a popular musician, that's fine also. So I might throw to Jade now, who is just a really terrific example of someone who's got great vocal skills, great saxophone skills, and is out there doing some really amazing things. So Jade, do you want to take over?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Also, thank you for being so complimentary.
Well, if you pay me, I'll contribute, you know.
Getting to soak in that. Yeah, I think Rob covered a lot of points that I was actually considering of mentioning, but I'll just elaborate more on that based on a student's experience. So as Rob said, I'm now in the honours course of the Bachelor of Music. However, I finished my undergraduate Bachelor last year. And I think something that really differentiates the Bachelor of Music course at Melbourne in the Jazz and Improvisation stream, apart from other Bachelors of Music, is that the composition emphasis for Jazz and Improvisation musicians. Because I felt for me, when I first entered the course, that I would have no facility to compose my own music. And I found through the course that not only compositions, and it's now something I feel really comfortable doing, and pursue much more in like my extracurricular life, which is really awesome, and something that I feel was gifted from my time at studying the course. Furthermore, like the faculty members in the Jazz and Improvisation department are a really, really strong group of educators and musicians and composers. They're all still practitioners, and you get some really, really great advice, wisdom, both musical and otherwise, from the staff. Like Tess said, like that time you spend with your one-on-one tutor once a week can sometimes be like some of the things that you really, the advice you really hang on to. In a day, the undergraduate course, of course, now being in the honours is significantly different, but in the
It looks like Jade's screen's frozen there. We'll just give her a second to see if she comes back.
Oh, well, I might just jump in then. So yeah, I guess a day-to-day, our focus is very much on small ensemble. So say on a Monday morning, you'll come in, you'll do your small ensemble. Tuesday, you will do a lesson in what we call improvisation. Wednesday, you will rehearse with your small ensemble again. Thursday, you will be in a class called workshop. And through the week, then you'll also have theory lessons, oral training lessons, composition lessons, piano lessons. So it's a very full program. And we're also asking that you're practicing, doing good practice as well. So there's a lot of advice coming through from your teachers on what good sustainable practice is. And, you know, we're thinking about you playing for a very long time. I heard a statistic that said if you are under the age of 30 by the year 2030, you will probably live to being 120 years old, albeit with digital augmentation or whatever. But that gives you a lot of time to practice and work on your art. And so we set you up with good practice technique for once you leave college. I just thought I wanted to mention one other thing that just to come back on something Don said. One of the things that we've had trouble with in the past is just musicians who have been crash hop musicians have not reached their English ATAR of 25. So I really encourage you to put the extra work into English, because that's something we really need to make sure that you've got. So, you know, really work hard on your English. So
That's a good tip, Rob. Thank you so much. We might have to leave it there for now. That was all really, really interesting. Thank you. So we've just got a little, no problem. Thanks, Rob. So we've got time now to hear about the third stream that we have in the Bachelor of Music. This is our interactive composition stream. So I would like to welcome Mark Pollard, the head of interactive composition and professor in music, and also Patrick Telfer, who is a third-year interactive composition student. And they can introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about that stream of the course. Hi, guys.
Hello. Mark, I think you're muted, sorry.
I'm unmuted. I think that's what the little voice told me. I'm unmuted. That's good. Good day, everybody. Yes, I'm Mark Pollard, and wonderful to connect with everybody, albeit remotely in these crazy times. I'll talk a little bit about interactive composition, and then I'll invite a colleague from the program, Patrick, to talk a bit more about it. I should begin by saying that it's a quirky title, interactive composition. It's strange because it's not a genre, it's a way of making and a way of doing things. And that way of doing things is different for every person. And the whole idea behind the course is it's responding to a 21st century towards 2050 environment where music is sound design, where writers, composers, singer-songwriters, and broadly those that make sound in any advertising context are all colliding around this notion of sound and sound studies. So really interactive composition is about, firstly about understanding music from a sound perspective and broadly from a, I suppose, a cross-genre and collaborative perspective, and very much also about looking at ways in which we can think about what is work ready in this part of the 21st century. You'll see if you looked at the broad outline for the course that collaboration is a major part of what we do, and we see that as a really important part of a skill for lifelong learning. It's also linked very much to creative problem solving, creative problem solving in sound, but certainly an approach to creative problem solving that can be transferred to any other, I suppose, way of working. Certainly in design, we've heard some students working in economics and going on to law, as Rob has said, in other areas. So being adaptive is a major part of what we do in interactive composition. The other thing to think about is that the program is a project-based program, and students work on, in one subject alone, they can work on 4 projects a semester, and we finish projects every second week. Then there are 3 other subjects that students work on. So it's very much a practice-based approach where you're making things all the time. You're showing them to your peers and to your mentors. You're working with industry quite a lot as we move into third year industry-like projects, and then moving on to the next project. So it's wonderful to work in that way. It can be fairly intense for some, but it's certainly very rewarding. The other thing about it is that you'll see that we don't talk about styles at all, and that's because the course is what we might call style inclusive. And we have students in the program that come from what I might call a hardcore metal background, where feedback, which is my love as well, is the driving impetus behind what you make, feedback and noise and industry. Others who come from a classical performance background who have worked as, in some cases, worked as classical cellists and soloists, others from a jazz and improv background, some from a music theatre background, some from a straight-ahead singer-songwriter background, others that have come from a sound design, installation for games and other area kind of background. Pretty much every student in the course comes from what I would consider to be somewhat of a different sound and music making background. Even though interactive composition is not a performance course, all of the students in the course perform. Some as DJs, some as EDM dance artists, and generally perform collaboratively with each other, sometimes online, as Patrick might talk about in a minute, and sometimes solo. In terms of what you do in the course, it consists of 3 core areas that run most of the time that you'll be in the course. One part is called sound studies, which deals with what might be called theoretical studies, but also deals with production, technology, recording, and critical listening in that context, and that links up closely with what you make. Another subject is music making laboratory, where you're making things in a group situation, but you're directing what you're making and leading groups. That can involve arranging, group improvisation, working with music theatre on projects, and certainly working on film scores and sound design. Finally, I should most certainly point out that interactive composition involves a lot of interaction with other areas across the faculty and with industry as well. And by that, we work closely with all of the disciplines at the VCA, and there are core projects as well as elective projects linked to dance, to theatre, to installation work, and soon to be with design as well as projects that are outside. We're working on a project with the Alfred Hospital at the moment, and we'll work with the Arts Centre on a remote access schools project next semester. So that's kind of what it is. It's a bit hard to understand from the title, but it's very much about interactivity and making. In terms of audition, we're looking, I suppose, for 3 things. Primarily, it has to do with how you do what you do with sound. That is, how creative are you? What is your craft like? And what is your technique like with sound? And that can come from any background. And it could be that you work in multiple backgrounds, that you write songs, you also write orchestral works, you work in advertising, or you work with media students at school. Any of those things, or all of those things, should be part of your audition. It's your best work you're putting forward. Not any work, just your best work, and it can be sections of work. The second part is the creative task, which can be pretty scary for some. Ordinarily, for an on-site audition, you don't get that creative task until you turn up, and you've got 5 minutes to complete it. And it's based on a scenario that you would probably get when you're in the course, working with a team. It could be that you're responding to a museum and you have to create sound for that, or you're responding to someone who wants a sound and portrait project. The third part of the audition is performance, and that is a very broad-based view of performance. That is, performance can mean you working as a DJ showing what you do. It could be that you perform some of your work as a cellist. It could be that you show some of your work as a singer-songwriter or as an installation artist. It's not enough, I should say, to come in with your laptop and hit play to show that you can work electronically. No, we want to see what you do and how you do it, but you've got to demonstrate a level of skill, a high level of skill in that. So I'm going to stop there because I can ramble on for hours, and those that are in my classes do say that great to ramble on, but we've got to go. So I know we've got to move on. So I'll ask wonderful colleague and current student in the third year of the program, Patrick, to talk about some of the wonderful things he's done and his experience. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, thanks, Mark. I always say to people that this course is probably the best thing I've ever done professionally. I was doing music beforehand for a few years, and I was always intimidated by the institutions because I come from a kind of alternative DIY experimental music background. To this day, I'm not particularly theoretically deft, and don't have a great ear for music, but I'm really good at other elements, other aspects of music, and this course has just fit me to a T. My audition, funnily, I brought in this big box that was full of wires. I don't know if you remember, Mark, but it didn't work at all. And thankfully, you were able to see. I actually ended up just hitting play, but you were able to see past that, and thankfully I got in, and it's been amazing. The community is really fantastic. I feel like I've really found a home for myself. It's so rare that you're in a situation that I'm in a situation where I'm surrounded by people who are willing to talk about compression and the intricacies of Ableton Live, and I really enjoy talking about that kind of stuff. The collaboration has been really interesting. I've been able to meet people from all of the different faculties and work on projects. I'm doing one at the moment where we're collaborating and making music through Zoom, doing live improvisation, and it's mostly kind of aesthetically jazz music, but yeah, I've been able to meet people from all over the course, and it's been a really, really amazing experience for me. My main advice to people about it is that the course is kind of what you make it. There are so many amazing opportunities that being a student at Uni Melb affords you, from funding to professional development to networking, and even to access to the amazing facilities. There's a storeroom that's full of beautiful synthesizers and drum machines that you can just take and use. I went in there once in first year and I said, how much can I take at a time? And he said, well, how much do you want? Let's talk about it. And I've come to learn that if you want something and you ask for it, the worst thing that's going to happen is someone is going to say no. And if you don't ask, you'll never know. And even if they do say no, if you ask again in a couple of weeks, maybe the answer will be different. So it can really be like, yeah, the course can be what you make it, as can your career afterwards. It's been really helpful kickstarting my career to becoming, making some money off music. And I can't recommend it enough, especially if you're coming from a bit more of an alternative perspective to the classical and jazz kind of background.
Thank you, Patrick and Mark. I think that's just about all we've got time for. I know it's really hard to wrap up all the amazing things that you do in this short amount of time, but hopefully it's enough to give people a real flavour for what it is that we can offer. So I might thank you guys now. Now, I know one thing that we do get a lot of questions about that I haven't addressed in a lot of detail is the Diploma of Music. So a lot of what we've spoken about tonight has been the Bachelor of Music. And there absolutely is the opportunity, as Don mentioned before, for students who are studying a different Bachelor at the University of Melbourne to also pick up some subjects alongside that Bachelor as part of their course and complete a Diploma of Music within the 3 years of their degree, or possibly 3.5 years, depending on how you structure your subjects. And we do get students of a really high caliber who do choose to take on that Diploma of Music alongside the other Bachelor. So Don, do you have just a couple of seconds to add anything to that around the Diploma of Music.
So that's right on, Cody. Yeah, stay involved. That's all I can say. Of course, we love to see you. If there are sometimes a few little conflicts here and there with a basic subject in biosciences or something, so that you can't participate in the orchestra that semester, or and so there are some things that are stressful in that way. But we really try to work hard around to make sure that you're able to take part in both. There are also diplomas in other areas, so you could do a Bachelor of Music and perhaps do a diploma in another, and there are a few students that do that. But the Melbourne model is a pretty interesting, it's kind of a beast, and I'm just now kind of figuring out how it all works. But the idea is, if you're doing an undergraduate in one area, you really can switch courses, switch directions at the end of that initial 3-year degree, and do a graduate diploma in just about any other area, and then continue right along in that area. So, you know, think long term, and if your desires or interests change, you can at the end of that initial 3-year, you can go in a different direction. But take a look at the Diploma in Music. It's a pretty special situation, and you do have access to any of the subjects that our Bachelor of Music students also have as well.
Great, thank you. We're just about out of time, so thank you guys. Thank you, Patrick, Mark, and Don on the screen at the moment. Cheers. I know that Jade dropped out before, so I'd like to welcome Jade back just quickly, not even to say anything, but just to wave and let everyone know you're okay. And then I think we will wrap up for this evening. Hi, Jade. So thank you. I'd like to thank all of the panelists this evening, Don and Tess, Rob and Jade, Mark and Patrick. And we all hope we see some of you attendees applying soon and studying with us in the next couple of years. So thank you everyone for your time tonight.